Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jackson Fisk, and my company is Goal Zero. We are the simple way to manage safety. This is my show, Zero Hour. It is an interview format live broadcast where we talk with business owners from safety, HR, and all other professions, and non-for-profits, all in the hope to share their stories and help educate those who need it. Today's guest is iHUMAN Youth Society. iHUMAN Youth Society is an art-based, youth-led charitable non-for-profit in Treaty 6 territory, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, operating since 1997. Young people and young families who live on and off the streets struggle with substance use, addiction, and mental health issues, are gang involved, experience family neglect or abuse, and are often in conflict with the law and involved with child welfare, are engaged by this organization. The young people at the intersection of these social issues, homelessness, suicide, and barriers like trauma, poverty, low literacy, and to change their circumstances. iHUMAN recognizes the continued impact of colonialism, residential schools, and intergenerational trauma and violence on Indigenous communities. Their anti-oppressive youth work, engagement on practice values, honoring the human being. 80 to 90% of the young people who attend iHUMAN Youth Society identify as Indigenous. As a counterbalance to these risk factors and stressors, they find prevailing evidence in incredibly talented individuals demonstrating amazing resilience, as well as creativity, loyalty, perseverance, protector instinct, integrity, leadership, and ambition. iHUMAN's experience demonstrates that what these young people need is an alternative to high-risk choices, is to share their wisdoms, gift, and voices. So with that intro, let's get into it. All right, made it through. Thank you for joining me today, you guys. We have Catherine and Gus. Catherine is the executive director. I hope I got that right.
You did.
Of iHUMAN Youth Society. And Gus, you are the communications whiz and expert. Is that right?
You got it.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope I didn't butcher your intro too much. And, I really appreciate you guys to take the time to sit with me and talk and help educate society today about iHUMAN.
Thank you, Jackson. We're really honored to be given the invitation to join you today. And Tansei from Amiskwaciwâskahikan, which is the Cree name for the area upon which Edmonton sits, and therefore where iHUMAN finds itself. As I said, we're really honored to join you this morning.
Well, thank you very much. The honor is all mine. So let's dig right into it. I mentioned it quickly. So you've been a non-for-profit since 1997. Can you give me some history on iHUMAN, how it started, and the whole basis that it was formed off of?
I'd be happy to. So iHUMAN's history really informs how we are today. And because we are a youth-led, arts-based organization, that's how we got our start. And our genesis comes from a group of young people who heard about a project that two local artists were working on. And those artists were Sandra Bromley and Wallace Kendall. They were working on a project called the Gun Sculpture. And at the time, that project was 5 tons of decommissioned weapons that they had collected from around the globe, from individuals, from soldiers, from child soldiers, right out of the hands of some of those soldiers or fighters. And
Wow.
the sculpture that they constructed was their statement on peace and a statement about anti-violence. And that project was being created here in Edmonton. And some street-involved young people at the time heard of that project, wanted to be involved in it. And Sandra and Wallace, because it involved guns, those young people weren't able to. But the interest that the young people showed inspired Sandra and Wallace to invite the young people to consider having their own exhibit. And what did that group of young people have to say, or what did they want to share from their perspective on violence, on peace? And though there was a group originally of 6 young people, they were street involved, and they obviously had a firsthand lived experience of what violence could be like from a younger person's viewpoint. So over the course of the mentorship that the young artists received from Sandra and Wallace, they created their own exhibit, and it was called Red Tear. And by the end of the exhibit's creation, there was about a dozen of young people that were involved. And the Red Tear and the gun sculpture were premiered at the then Edmonton Art Gallery and opened by then Deputy Prime Minister Anne McClellan. And at the time, recalling that this is the late 90s, so some of the language, some of the stereotypes about young people at that time framed young people as hoodlums, troublemakers, not really having much to contribute to the community. And what Red Tear did was to present an obvious narrative to counter those perceptions that the majority of the community held about this young artist group. So it stimulated a lot of conversation, a lot of interest. People were inspired by what the young people had to say and the message of peace that they were proposing. And once the exhibit closed, it had been thought, well, this was just a nice exhibit. But the young people who had been involved in it said, we want you to continue to provide us a space, continue to mentor us in the use of arts, in social justice issues, because we have a lot to say and we want to be able to use the arts as that medium. And therefore, iHUMAN has grown out of that history, that legacy of young people saying, we didn't have a space, we've created a space, keep the space going, and let us show you what we can share in terms of our gifts and our artistry.
That's amazing. So from that evolution, so we had some young artists, some kind of, have a call out for help almost as well, saying, hey, look, we need support, we want mentorship. Tell me how that kind of evolved. So did the government step in and help right away, or was it self-funded from people from the street? How did that evolve?
Great question, Jackson. Well, for the first couple of years, it was entirely through community support, that there was a space that was donated from a business owner. There were art stores and suppliers in Edmonton that donated supplies. There were numerous artists who gave of their time. And iHUMAN at that time was a kind of a 24/7 word got out amongst the young people on the street that this was a place where you could go and be creative, pick up a paintbrush, and learn some creative skills, how to be a visual artist. And over the couple of years, that evolved into the use of music and the hip hop culture and the values, the principles that the hip hop community can embody in the young people that really spoke to them. And so we branched out into other creative mediums, music, the poetry, the b-boy, b-girl. So it just keep expanding from there, from what do the young people identify as the artistic mediums that they want to express themselves.
I think that's amazing. And, from a youth standpoint, not that I'm a youth anymore, but, I look back at my youth and just, the anxiety, the not knowing of just your every day-to-day activities and the trouble that I got into, finding constructive outlets in any form can help sway your path in life, regardless of what it is, right? For me, it was sports. I always wanted to play music, and I had a whole bunch of instruments, but I just looked at them and went, it was easier for me to go run and do stuff. But, having a support network, which I found in team sports and coaches and, even some teachers, they would actually take that time to mentor a person. It goes a long way. So to find that type of community within the city, if you don't have one at home or in your everyday life, that's amazing. And it's with like-minded people, right? So if you all share certain outlets, whether it's art, music, dance, you can feel comfortable in doing that, right? So that's just such an amazing story. Yeah. So sorry, I got sidetracked there just thinking of it. It's very touching.
It is. I want to honor, Jackson, that you've really summed up very, very nicely the community that the young people found amongst their peers. They found a place where they realized there were, unfortunately, many other young people, and we serve young people between the ages of 12 and 24. Okay. And that age range was determined by those initial young people. The principles, the values upon which our organization delivers our mandate, our mission, that is rooted in the ideas that the young people had at that time to create a space that was non-judgmental, a space that was safe, one that they could acknowledge that each of them had a story of trauma, and that trauma did not need to define what their present or their future might look like while they were at iHUMAN. While they were at iHUMAN, they were artists. Yep. And they had a purpose and an identity that could be explored and provide an opportunity for some to engage their trauma in a creative healing way. And for others, it's about realizing that they have a talent and a gift. Most of the young people at that time, and as it continues today, they are not in school. And so they've been out of school for a long time. And school tended not to be an environment where they felt welcome. And iHUMAN is the juxtaposition of that. It is a place that they created the way they would like to engage with peers and with society, and work through problems, find solutions, and support each other on the path that they each they have dreams. They want to own cars. They want to have houses with picket fences and families, and go on vacations and get a big screen TV. Those are all typical kind of dreams and hopes of these young people as well. And iHUMAN is a place that lets them see those possibilities, but maybe also other possibilities that they hadn't considered for themselves.
That's amazing. And that's, there's so many people, and I guess even society, that you see that have suffered trauma in some form or another in their life. And then it completely defines them as a person, right? They hold on to that trauma, and that just becomes part of their persona now. So any sort of help to break that out, to realize that that isn't you, right? You can still be whatever you want to be. Now, yes, it's challenging, and you're going to have to work through that. But to make sure that that doesn't actually define who you are as you grow up. Yes, you can acknowledge it. Yes, you can work through it. But yeah, look, you can still do whatever you want. And yeah, there's challenges. And if you can help them through that, that's amazing. So let's talk to, how did you both get involved? Gus, how did you get involved with iHUMAN and to the role that you do now?
Okay. Well, I actually first heard of iHUMAN in 2006 while I was studying my master's at the University of Alberta. It had such a good reputation already by that time. It was only a 9-year-old organization, and it already, we were talking about it all the time as being a real pillar of the arts community here in Edmonton. And yeah, it was. I remember at that time I was just like, boy, I'd sure like to work there someday. And then probably about 4 years ago, I met one of the other directors, our director of authenticity, Keith Callahoo. He's someone I met him through theater. My master's and my PhD are both in theater, and he's an actor. So I met him working on one of the many theater projects that we all us theater folks do. And then 8 years later, 2016, I met him at a I can't even remember what the meeting was. It was something to do with the Edmonton Public School Board, and we reconnected, and he gave me a tour of this space, and then it was still in the back of my mind, like, boy, I would like to work there. And then last fall, I was working with the provincial government, and I was laid off. And that thing that was in the back of my mind of, boy, I would like to work there, came very quickly to the front of my mind. And I kind of looked around what iHUMAN, what was going on at iHUMAN, and I just came up with a proposal for Katherine and for Keith and said, would you guys like to hire me? And it was an offer that they accepted. So yeah, that's how I started here in my role as communications and stakeholder relations director.
Awesome. So it's like the manifest destiny. Keep thinking about it; it'll eventually happen.
Yeah, and it's been a really good fit so far. Like most of my career has been focused on getting communities to do artwork and to express themselves. And then I also have a balance with a lot of policy work, working with the government. So it's kind of like I've made the joke a couple times. I feel like I'm the director of grant writing, because there's a lot of that going on right now, just because of what's going on in nonprofit funding. So, but yeah, it's been a really good fit so far, and I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Katherine, how long have you been with iHUMAN?
Well, I've been with iHUMAN since 2010. So last decade, I've been with iHUMAN and joined iHUMAN when it was, in its just entering its early teens. And I really feel like iHUMAN at times mirrors the experience of the young people in terms of the age and the development of our organization. So I came in at a time when the organization was looking for a stable, I don't know if I'm that stable, but they were looking for an executive director that could commit.
We all have our own definitions.
Yes, yeah. So I joined iHUMAN. I had some pretty pivotal, life-changing situations happening in my life at that time. I also was let go from a post-secondary institution, which had been my former job, and coming to iHUMAN while I had done a short stint as an executive director, and some of my early schooling is around administration and management. I hadn't worked for an organization of the size of iHUMAN at the time. And at the time, it was a relatively small organization. It had 5 staff. It was in a donated 3,000 square foot building. Its annual operating budget was about $400,000. Reasonably small potatoes, but at the time it seemed very large.
Yeah.
And a big role. And I think the reason it felt that way is because I've always seen my role at iHUMAN as I'm making a commitment to the young people, and that I am stewarding the leadership of this organization so that it can prosper and grow and become one of those organizations that has a 50, 100-year history. So I joined, and I'm still here learning and enjoying the role.
That's awesome. Well, like they say, the minute we stop learning is the minute we pretty much gave it up, right? So,
Indeed.
So when you mentioned the age range for youth to come is 12 to 24. Now, is this a walk-in facility, or do you have to apply to be part of your programs?
Do you want me to field that, Gus? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we have we register the young people. Okay. So the young people want to, in order to keep that safety, to keep that space where everyone can relate and can appreciate that others have a story of trauma as well. Young people do register, so we're not a drop-in facility. Okay. In the sense that anyone could just walk off the street and spend the day here. We do ask that young people start to build a relationship with us. And that relationship involves us learning about them learning about us and how we want to work with them, co-create with them, and understand what it is that they think they may need, and for us to provide the expertise or the resources that we have. So young people register, and then once they're registered, they determine how they engage with iHUMAN. So okay. We have 3 pillars that we say we operate our I'll say business around. That we are first and foremost about the creative pillar. So we use the arts as the way to engage with young people, and have about 8,000 square feet of creative studio space in our building. Then the second thing, because we are working with young people that have been in high-risk situations, have experienced trauma, we have a caring program area. So our caring program addresses those basic needs, comes at the work from an anti-oppressive, trauma-informed approach, and provides or connects that young person to different needs that they may have, whether that be financial assistance, housing, mental health, physical health support. We have a shower, we have laundry, so we can do some basic services that relate to a young person maintaining their sense of dignity and their sense of wellness about themselves. And then our third pillar, as Gus mentioned, is our authenticity pillar. And the authenticity pillar, it is about keeping it real. And that, again, is something that iHUMAN has tried to maintain and approach the work that we do from that perspective. And to keep it real, to be authentic, means that we acknowledge we are a non-Indigenous organization that serves primarily Indigenous young people. We have about 85% of the young people that register with iHUMAN who would self-identify as First Nations, Métis, or Inuit. And then we have other young people from other communities, the Black community, the Asian community, the white community. All those young people share the commonality of having been marginalized, having been experienced violence or trauma, and that brings them together to register here. So authenticity keeps us real. The programming that's in that pillar are solutions that young people have created to their needs. So we have an I Succeed program, which is a pre-employment and an academic readiness program that comes out of the young people identifying, hey, we know that we have been out of school or out of the work employment labor markets. And so what do we need to do? What do we need to address to return to those or to be invited into those spaces? And then we have a program called Woven Journey, which focuses on Indigenous young women, female identifying, who are pregnant or parenting. And it was started by a young woman who couldn't see a space for herself as she was pregnant, had an addiction, living rough, living in an unsafe situation. And when she became pregnant, saw that as a time to make some changes. And so she created this Woven Journey program, which has been running now for about 12 years. And so I've just realized in this year that the program now, the first youngster, the first baby that would have been in that program is now old enough to potentially come to iHUMAN. But the thing about Woven Journey, it aims to break that cycle. It aims to not have this next generation of young people, of little ones, entering the children's services system, being apprehended. So if we've done our job well, and if the young people of 20 years ago, 23 years ago, and I know that there's many success stories of families staying together, of artists now being out in the community or running their own business, being entrepreneurs. So
that's amazing.
I don't remember what the original question was, Jackson, but
you know what? That is all right. That was it started with asking if there was a walk-in service.
Yeah.
But I like that.
Catherine, one of the things that you said that's so exciting for me, being someone who's only been around for a little while with this organization, is that the young people bring forth an idea and then it's executed. It's so exciting to see and being a part of an organization that does this. I know, like, when we're functioning, it can be a young person can come in with a request on a Tuesday to help them with something, and then on Thursday we've met it. Like that's something that happens all the time. I'm thinking about, like, we had a young Muslim woman who's an artist here come in and identify that there wasn't a prayer space for her to work in, or to pray in, sorry. And she just asked if we could make that possible, and we did, like the same week pretty much that she made the request. It's you know, in a lot of other organizations, you go through a lot of red tape and a lot of different things to make something like that possible. But just because of the nature of this organization being centering young people's collaboration with us, then it just makes it possible and makes it exciting.
That's amazing. And yeah, from a work standpoint, procedural standpoint, well, employment standards. We always have these policies of inclusion, no discrimination, sexism. Basic human rights is really what it is, and we've always
Mhm.
had these policies. But then acting on them is another thing, right? And that's not to say to call out certain companies or anything like that, but it's easy for us to write something down and have it in a mandate somewhere, and then it's another for us to actually act on something, right? As a society as a whole. So for someone to bring that request to you and you going, yeah, let's just do it. It should be that easy, right? It should be that easy in everything we do. So kudos. um, let's transition into. I have this nice graphic that you sent me, and as we talked about your three pillars and your programs that you base on. So we have your uh, theory of change and strength-based approach. Can you highlight some of this for me and walk me through this process?
Yeah, for sure. I can walk you through this. So
Okay.
when we look at this model, this we call this like our iHUMAN strength-based approach for Indigenous young people and young families.
Okay.
And this is
It's a big
something
title.
that yeah, and really like what it is it's a good way for us to communicate with outsiders who are not a part of our community
Yep.
about how things go here, about how things work at iHUMAN. Now, a lot of, and I've done a lot of educational work in my past, and what happens a lot with educational work is that we talk about a student-centered approach or a learner-centered approach, and this is different than that.
Okay.
iHUMAN approach to it, and it's based off of a model that Dr. Jill Fish presents, and and what it does is instead of centering the young person or the student or the learner, is it centers Indigenous oral history and ancestral knowledge. It puts that at the center. And then the second circle outside of that is Indigenous culture, knowledge, and relationship to the land. So those are the powers and forces that are centered within this strength-based approach, and it's from that a lot of the with the young people coming to us from multiple different backgrounds of being in the margins of the Edmonton community. Um, Sometimes they don't have that center necessarily, but when they look back at their culture, at Indigenous culture, and then Indigenous oral traditions, that's where the strength really comes from. And then from that, they discover themselves, and then through that, they kind of figure out kind of where they can fit in with society and all of that. So it becomes a bit of a not rebuilding, but a rediscovering process for the young people. And it's something that we came onto from our practice of working with young people. It was from working with young people and discovering that they had like these wants to discover more about their past, and then also just being on the land, like Catherine shared with us the importance of just reaching back to the ancestral knowledge that us as a non-Indigenous organization doesn't have. So we have to create really good partnerships with the Indigenous community as much as possible to help us with this strength-based approach.
That's amazing. And yeah, there's a lot of lost, I guess, for youth and everyone. If you've lost those roots, you would feel lost as a whole, right? Because you don't feel like you belong with anything. And then if you're marginalized already, um, yeah, to find that bonding with another group or with the people that you surround yourself with, uh, I could see that as a great building block of just trying to strengthen your own self worth anyway. So that's amazing. Living off the land, I wish we did this more with everybody. Getting back to nature and these relationships to the land that I think society as a whole we've forgotten about. Um, can I come join? can I come learn more? Because it's it's an amazing approach to what you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, and we definitely really, the staff and the young people especially really treasure that time that we get to spend with the elders and in ceremony. Kind of whenever we ask the young people what exactly they want, what they're looking for, almost every time we ask for that, there is a mention of ceremony. Because they really do find something in it. And I myself, I find something in it as well. I cherish every moment I get to spend with the elders that we work with, and then the elders that I've worked with before coming here.
Okay, that's amazing.
And
So,
I think if I could just add, I was going to say that even in the urban environment, it is possible to have that connection to nature and land, and to have a respect and a reverence for where we are, and an appreciation and honoring of all life, and that life includes the grass, the animals, that the air that we're breathing, and to recognize that, and for the young people to say, if that is healthy, then I can begin to be healthy. I have something literally that I can root to, and start to, if you think of it like a little tree, a seed, a sapling, as that sapling grows, it gets more rooted because it understands who it is, it understands its identity, it understands its purpose in life. It understands its value, as you said, self-worth. That's one of our objectives. It sees that it is part of belonging beyond itself. And those four outcomes is what we hope by using this strengths-based approach, young people leave more solid in understanding who they are and what they contribute, and that they have value, and that they're important to not only themselves, but to the community, to everyone.
Yeah, and a current learning that's taking place through our COVID times. Of course, everything is done remotely right now. But our Woven Journey program right now is working on a gardening project in which gardening packages have been sent out to the mothers, and then our authenticity director Keith and a few of the other staff are helping the young mothers learn how to plant a garden and how to grow things. So that's like exactly like literally and figuratively what Catherine's talking about right
now. That's so awesome. And it's a lost art again for anyone. You know, I try to grow stuff and it just goes, yeah, that used to be a plant, and it's gone now. All right,
I'm a front yard gardener myself, so the potatoes are really happy with all the rain we've been getting.
Perfect. I just, my in-depth is, I'll just go to the farmer's market.
Yeah. I've said that a couple times too, and I'm like, oh, my parents aren't doing well, so I'll go to the farmer's market. But yeah, and then the other graphic that we've sent to you here is just it's what we call iHUMAN's theory of change, and it stems itself inside of brain science and what we know about the brain that's happening, and it's also actually shaped the same way in a sense as our building is, because when you enter our building, you enter into the caring space, and that's represented in this figure here by the brain stem. And what happens in the caring space is you get like the answers to the questions of, am I safe? What do I need? That's the space where our Links mental health clinic is, and where the shower facilities, where our donations are kept, and where our food facility is as well. So kind of like all of that kind of like first, like, am I safe? Am I okay? What do I need? All of those things are taken care of, and that's right in our brain stem, where all of that kind of lives inside of our brain chemistry. And then secondly, the limbic system, that's where our authenticity programming lies. So that's, if you're walking into our building, you go through the caring space, and then you'll enter into the authenticity space. And those, of course, are the questions that you're asking is where do I belong, and who am I? Or I know who I am, I belong. Like you're giving those answers. So that's, like Catherine said, just about finding a place in the community, either through the Woven Journey programming as a member of a family, as a parent, or through the I Succeed programming as finding work, finding a job, or whatever else. And then also a lot of the ceremony will happen, of course, through the Authenticity program. So that, and then like we said, that's where a lot of belonging is found. And then when you come up the stairs in our building, you find yourself where all of our art studios are. And that's the prefrontal lobe in our brain chemistry. That's where creativity happens. That's where we kind of like any sort of upper level thinking or thought or philosophizing. There we go. Okay. And theoretical kind of thinking or artistic creation. All of that happens in the prefrontal lobe, and that's where the creative programming is. So for iHUMAN, what we assert and what we have seen throughout our years of practice is that when a young person or a young artist comes in here and goes through these three areas, goes through the am I safe, what do I need, and has those needs met, and then has the where do I belong, has those needs met, and then is able to experience and perform some creative tasks and creative outlets, it's from that a young person achieves a sense of belonging, purpose, identity, and self-worth, which are the goals of our programming.
Awesome.
I'll just add that it might appear like it's a linear journey, and if you come through our building, as Gus described, there is this path that you can take, which would lead you through the different areas of the brain and thinking and capacity, and by correspondence, the different spaces in the building. But the journey that a young person takes is really of their own devising. So they may decide to go directly to the creative space and to be in that space in their brain, and not engage in the authentic or the caring area until such time as they initiate that. Someone else might go and focus in on the authenticity space or the caring space. Others are moving throughout and trying to figure out where do they want to start. So it's a journey that we individualize and recognize each young person is going to choose how our space supports them best.
And that's great. Obviously, you can't say that, one path fits every person, right? So you have to be flexible with that regardless of what you do. And then, I guess even if they went from a creative space to be like, okay, I can do this, it'll build that confidence, and then you'll start to open up and be comfortable that you can explore other options.
Yeah, I think if we think back to earlier in our conversation about the trauma, part of the reason we've started to use this theory of change that's focused in on the brain science is for young people to understand, again, that message of they are not their trauma. They do not spend all of their life in that fight, flight, or beep.
The other one.
The other one. And that space is the amygdala, which is in your brain stem. And that is a part that all of us as human beings have. All of us can be triggered by something, a hurt or a pain. And for many of the young people, they have spent a good deal of their life and their experience and their engagement with the world has been in that brainstem portion. And so to come into a space where they can actually go and activate another part of their brain, it sounds great, but it can also be pretty scary because you have not been, you may have in the past, when you've been in a creative space, been shot down or been bullied or been criticized as not worthy of having those talents. So it is
It only
something.
takes 1 or 2 times to get smashed down to not want to get back up sometimes, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a bit serendipitous in a way that we realized, and it's really to the credit of one of our former employees, Brianna Olson, who recognized that the way we laid out the building actually reflects the composition of the brain. And the way the building is because the young people said, build it this way. So they didn't even realize that they were constructing when we bought our building and we did our renovation, and they said, put this here, put that there, make sure you include this in the space. It didn't all sort of come together, or that synergy realization, until like 8-10 months ago, that we kind of realized, oh, hey, look at that. The young people knew all along, and now we can explain it in a framework that maybe translates for other people to learn about what it is that we do and how we're supporting young people.
Awesome. So that's a good segue. Let's quickly talk about your new building.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
so you said you went from 3,000 square foot, donated space to now you have an 8,000 square foot creative space. So is that the whole thing, or, how did we come about getting this new building?
Yeah. Well, we actually have 22,000 square feet of space.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. So the 3,000 square foot space that I joined iHUMAN in 2010, up until that time, iHUMAN had been in less than desirable spots in our downtown area. They were all donated, and we're very grateful for those donations at that time. For a period, we were homeless. So we ended up in 2010 being in a space that was about 3,000 square feet. We then were moved on from there to another less than desirable space, the old Peep Show that used to be on 95th. And
an ionic building.
Yes, it definitely had its history, and I think it's a part of iHUMAN's history that we have occupied, lived in some pretty undesirable spaces, and yet the space within those walls was safe, loving, colorful, creative. And that was because that was how the young people engineered the relationship and the activity in those spaces. So in about 2011, we were actually living in or using the old former Camelot building, Camelot Bar. We got moved on from there to the old Peep Show. And we were in the process of doing a capital campaign to purchase and renovate a building. And we were lucky enough that the old restaurant warehouse supply store, which is where we are now, we were introduced to the then owner who was looking to sell it. He learned about what iHUMAN was doing and offered to sell us the building on a take-back mortgage, which means that we didn't need to go to the bank. We could make our mortgage payments to that owner. And the board up until that time had saved a good chunk of money, really, about $400,000, to work towards getting a building. So ultimately, our capital campaign had the goal of $10 million to purchase, renovate the building for about $7 million, and to set aside an additional $3 million for an endowment or a trust that we could operate the building. So we didn't quite get to the full 10 million. Back in the 2000s, when the tank went with the oil the last time around, 2013, 14, 15 in there. But we did do our project, and we ended up purchasing the building and having about 70% of the work donated by companies, suppliers, vendors. We had 4 of the largest construction companies come together. They usually compete with each other, but they came together to support iHUMAN. They divvied up the capital project, each contractor taking the thing that they do best, and they each then contacted their subs and their trades, their suppliers. So we ended up in this building that we are in now.
That's
with
amazing.
the generosity of many people, lots of labor and volunteering. And here we are, 5 years later. We say new building, but it's been 5 years.
It's still new. You still got
it still feels new because for the young people at the time, to know that iHUMAN would have a permanent location, a place where we could not be moved on or kicked out, as had been the experience of the organization and the young people through some of that earlier history. So
it helps with stability, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if you're trying to build those roots, you want a place to go.
Yes. And that's part of how the young people know us now is, okay, we have this space. And for some of the OG, they want the way it was. And for some of the new young people, they know iHUMAN as this space. So nice. We're blessed.
We're getting a little short on time, and I know we want to highlight a few things. So let's highlight your new broadcast studio and a project you guys are very proud of that came out of that. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, no, and really the broadcast studio is a result of the challenge of working through the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all going through right now. So schools were closed, I guess, as of March 16th, and at that time we had to do a large reassessment of exactly what we were doing as programming. We like we've talked about, we've had this new building, and we were inviting people into it to do artwork and to go through the authenticity and the caring programs as well. And now it became unsafe for us to gather. So our response to that challenge was to create a broadcast studio. So now a majority of the care work is actually done virtually, and just online through Zoom meetings or different things like that. But then as well, there's also programming that we're putting together. So Monday to Friday, every day, there's some sort of a caring program that happens. And then as well, we're also producing different segments. Catherine has her every Tuesday. She does Mama C Speaks to give updates to the young people about just what's going on at iHUMAN and everything that's happening here. And then as well, I guess kind of what we're considering right now, the proudest outcome of our broadcast studio is what was a part of Next Fest, which happened last week. And what it is it's a video, a movie that's called The Artist Versus, and then that's all, The Artist Versus.
Okay.
And it's approximately 40 minutes long, and it's filled with the wonderful music that we create out of our studio here, out of our music studio, with Enoch, our music coordinator. And all of the young people. The young people did all of the lyrics and all of the singing and putting it all together. And as well, there's a lot of video taken from around Edmonton. So it was all done during the pandemic with all of the social distancing and all of that in mind. And artists have a really great way of responding to challenges like that. And in this case, our broadcast studio did a wonderful job of it. So it'd be great. Anybody who listens to this, go out and check out we have a YouTube link that Jackson will provide here. Watch the video. It's for me, it's really nostalgia inducing, I would say. It involves a lot of imagery from around Edmonton. And then to add to that, it does a great job of highlighting how talented the young people are. A couple of I mean, it's as good as what you're going to hear on the radio, honestly. And Valkyrie and Faves, a few of the different artists, just to highlight a couple names. Their musical skill is very good. And one of the things that was a part of it was our artistic director ended up having to close caption the entire thing. So him and our administrative assistant typed out a lot of the lyrics. And in doing so, it really highlights how profound the lyrics are. It's like no joke. The lyrics are just so fantastic, just absolutely wonderful. And as well, a staff member's involved in it as well. And he dances. He's a very great dancer, a break dancer, a b-boy, and it's one of the highlights of the video as well. I don't want to ruin it. That'll be the tease. Like watch the video to see how amazing that the dancing is and the music is. Just watch it.
I look forward to the link, and I definitely will post it so everyone can experience that for you, because it sounds awesome. So we have
honestly, with the broadcast studio, we're still doing some growing pains. For years, we've been doing a lot of other artistic work, so we're new to this. And the fact that we put together something that's like something that we're really proud of just within a few months, like that was 3 months ago, I guess, that we kind of started this, is really quite exceptional. And once again, harkens back to kind of that thing about iHUMAN kind of responding to the challenges and immediately in a quick fashion.
That's awesome. And we've all had to adapt. And this is another segment that we could probably talk for a long time on, but we're going to try to hammer it out. The challenges of COVID-19, adaptation, and budget cuts. So every industry has been affected, and I'm sure non-for-profits are taking such a hit as well with everything that's going on. Quickly tell us, the hard lines, and then how can we help?
Thanks, Jackson. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, COVID has presented as Gus is saying, an opportunity to be innovative again, to look at what we have and to use our resources and our capacity. And it's also it's highlighted where the failings of our systems are around supporting mental health. That in particular is one of the programs that we had a 1-year funding support from the provincial government. That funding stream was scheduled to conclude at the end of March, and it did end at the end of March. It's kind of coincided with then the arrival of COVID. We had another program that was in our caring area, our outreach program, that along with 300 other programs across the province, the funding was eliminated or canceled, and people needed to decide whether they were going to reapply for a new delivery model. And iHUMAN did reapply, and so we did recapture a bit of our funding, but we lost about $220,000, and we were able to recapture about $60,000 from what of that 200 plus. So of course we appreciate any cash donations that supporters can provide to iHUMAN. We are coming up on the end of our fiscal year. Our new year starts in January. It has been tough. At one point, we were down to having enough money in cash flow for one more payroll. And subsequent to that, as often happens at iHUMAN, the serendipity, the synergy of iHUMAN to know who it is, who it supports, what it's here to do. The universe provides, and we were able to get some money through the federal wage subsidy program and to cover some of those salaries. But anyone hoping or wanting to contribute to iHUMAN financially, we'd be very grateful. CanadaHelps.org, search iHUMAN Youth Society, and you can make a donation there and receive your charitable receipt immediately. You can also contact Gus and just talk about how you think you might be able to support iHUMAN, share what your business or your talent, your gift is. What do you have in abundance that you could perhaps share with the young people here? And Gus will figure out how we might be able to use that. And if we aren't able to use it, then we know many other organizations that we can share that strength, that abundance, that generosity, and support the whole community. That's really what iHUMAN wants to do. And that's what the young people want to do. Throughout my time at iHUMAN, I am always immensely humbled by the generosity of those, of young people who have nothing, who literally give away what little they have to support a friend, a peer, a stranger. And because that is the energy, that's the goodness that's in people's hearts, in young people's hearts, we then get the benefit of that, of others wanting to share. So contact Gus. Very grateful again, Jackson, for the opportunity to share with your listeners, your viewers, what it is that we do. And we could have gone on for another 3 podcasts. So
we'll have to do some follow-up ones because there's so much that you can share, and it's such an amazing story. So I thank you both for helping educate us, and I hope that we can help you in the future. And anyone reaching out, we'll put all the stuff we talked about in the show notes, so you can get a hold of iHUMAN. And I thank you. You guys have a great day.
Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. We ran a bit long. Thank you for tuning in. It was such an amazing talk. We could have talked for hours. After I post this, I will share all the information on how to contact iHUMAN in the notes. Look them up, help share their message, share this broadcast. And like always, if you can like and share my social media channels, every bit of help is greatly appreciated. Have a great day.